Due to the following CBS School Break special, Magnum PI will not be seen today. It will be broadcast tomorrow in the regular time period.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
Welcome back, everybody. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Happy to welcome Don Cardeneas, a Chicago comics fixture, for the first time on Word Balloon. Good to see you, Don.
So pleased to be here, John. We've known each other for quite a bit. And I mentioned this before on Twitter. This is kind of like on my comics bucket list to be on Word Balloon.
Oh, that's really nice, man. No, I
So
appreciate
I'm totally stoked to be here.
Hey, congratulations. You and Steve Bryant was going to join us, had a little pet emergency, and we respect that. So we hope everything's okay with the dog. The dog's at the emergency room with the family, and Steve had to be there. But that's all right. Don and I could talk about their Kickstarter project for Evie and the Helsings, which is a really cool, you could tell from the cover that this combines the Dracula mythos with Van Helsing along with the punk rock scene. Is there a specific decade where this is set? I kind of got the 90s vibe from this.
This is it's kind of all decades. I mean, technically it's current day, but
Okay.
we wanted to kind of have the 80s kind of rock vibe, but also mix in some 90s stuff because that's where Steve and I, we're from, pretty much. So we kind of want to have like our cake and eat it too. So kind of have like the modern conveniences of things, but also have just battle of bands type scenarios where people actually went to shows a bunch, and just that kind of vibe where like a hair metal kind of hard rockish band could be really successful and not be a joke. No offense to Steel Panther, they're amazing, but it's satire. So it's we kind of want to have all that kind of stuff happening. So it's definitely taking the vibes from the 80s and 90s, but it is set in the current day. There's Ubers,
Okay.
There's cell phones.
Well, looking at the masthead here for the book, God, these are all my buddies, yourself and Steve, but doing color, another good Chicago buddy, Jason Millay, and Chris Murrin, who I love seeing when I go to the West Coast for Comic-Con and the like and stuff. A great LA guy. That is Chris still working with Fox?
I am not sure. Though Chris and I, we know each other off Twitter, and he's been, editing the book with Steve. We haven't had too much direct back and forth, but for all, I can't speak to that. But he's been awesome. I believe he and Steve actually were developing the book to work together on, or Steve approached him. I'm not sure the timeline of that, but it had kind of like been set aside as things do, and then Steve eventually asked me if I was interested in doing it, and then I was in the right place at the right time to say yes about it, and let's do this. We bandied some ideas back and forth, and kind of changed things up. Originally, Evie was Eddie, but
okay.
but I'm like, well, why? And this was before we started discussing this, before Eddie Van Halen had passed, and it was kind of like a love letter to Steve's appreciation of that band and that type of music. And I just said, like, can we make it Evie? And he's like, or no, I said let's make it Edie, like Edie Falco.
Yeah.
And then he comes back with Evie. I'm like, oh, that's even better. So
no, I think it's smart that it's a female hero, and also here's Steve. There's a ton of variant covers that you'll find on the Kickstarter campaign. Here's one of my favorites. And also Don, a great job on this Marvel recreation cover.
Well, that's the joy of having like Steve being working with Steve, because Steve's also a fantastic artist. So I penciled that and he inked it, because I have we have different styles, but we're like, let's see what we look like together. And this retro cover, while being an absolute blast to do, has also been like the most well received cover. We've actually made it a print on our stretch goals.
Hey, that's great, man. That's smart.
So the appropriate tiers who backed physical copies and stuff that get the stretch goals, you're going to get a 6x9 print of that as well. And it actually has us talking about the next issue and what cover we're going to homage next. And we're going to do the same setup, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're also working on some, there's a tier with sketch covers that we're going to be doing the kind of same thing on. Well, I'll be penciling and he'll be inking, or maybe vice versa. We'll see how it goes.
That's excellent, man. Here, I'm gonna go to your Kickstarter page, and congratulations, man. God, you got 3 weeks to go in the campaign, and thankfully you've already made your initial goal. You're at 1,000, which is terrific. And obviously Steve has had a long, successful history with Kickstarter. I'm sure he's cultivated a nice following with that. Oh, I'm sorry, I left the cover up. There we go, everybody. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you don't pay attention to what's being broadcast. But I think this is great. So, Don, have you done Kickstarters yourself before on other books?
I've been a part of many anthologies that have been on Kickstarter, but my own direct running of one was a few years ago for my book Pax of the Low Country. And while we raised an amazing like $8,000, we were really, really shooting for the stars with our goal, because we wanted to do a hardcover, which was like, in retrospect, not the smartest move. Had we gone just regular paperback, it would have been funded and it would have been great. But that's fine. You learn your lessons. I learned some lessons on just making that book and the ins and outs of making comics and getting things ready for print, that the lessons I learned after that, eventually getting, to do a pre-order kind of system for the actual trade paperback that we ended up doing, was incredibly helpful. I wish I didn't have to go that way, but if you don't learn from your mistakes, then then you can only regret them then, I guess. But
I'm sorry, finish your thought.
No, but yeah, so I was but that said, though, that was like 5 years ago. So the landscape of Kickstarter has changed so much in the past few years that, when I first did my last one, doing single issues of comics was kind of like, why are you doing that? And now it's like a completely viable system that Steve has tapped into with The Catch and some Athena Voltaire stuff and Ghoul Scouts.
Yes.
And quick story. Steve was the very first professional I ever spoke to at a convention and had like an actual conversation with. And this is back in, I think, the second C2E2, whenever that was, like 2009 or 2010.
Something like that. Yeah. More than 10 years ago, definitely.
And if you're just full of anxiety and just a nervous mess about speaking to anybody, you cannot speak to a better person than Steve Bryant. Maybe Sean Pryor, but
yeah, Sean's another good one. No, you're right. Just good
just
guys,
the sweetest,
gentle. Yes, very
it's the
gentle.
sweetest, nicest, most awesome people. And since then, Steve and I, we became buddies and pals, and we had long bandied back and forth, like, oh, we should do something together, blah blah blah. And I really wasn't at the level where I felt like it would benefit him to have me do art on his book. And I had approached him about a project that I had the concept for, and we were kind of working on it. we're gonna have someone else ink it too, and it just didn't. It just couldn't come together. I couldn't get myself to the place to where it was where I liked it. So we kind of set that aside, and then like a year later, I'm sitting in my car waiting for my daughter to come out of an appointment, and Steve texts me like, "Hey, I had this idea." When he DM'd me, I actually looked at the DMs the other day. He's like, "I had this idea," and he pitched me, you know, I think it was just Eddie Van Helsing or something, or Van Helsing's or something like that. And it was like he had this mock logo of just for inspiration of like the Van Halen logo, but it was like Van Helsing, and it was just really cool. I'm like, guitars. I'm a musician. Of course I'm going to be down for this. So yeah, I like immediately that afternoon I was already sending him sketches of like, here's what I think and blah blah blah, and it just really kind of blossomed from there. And as we started, developing the concept and stuff like that, Steve already had the scripts written. I kind of like, I gave him some of my pointers, but this is, Steve was leading the charge on this all the way. But he also gave me just like amazing amounts of room to kind of do my thing art wise. And so if I'm like, what, can we change this panel? Can we combine these panels? Can we like add a panel here or there to get this reaction or something? Never got any pushback from Steve. If anything, nothing but encouragement and helpful tips, because again, like I said, he's an amazing artist. So, I feel like this art in this book is the best stuff I've done.
I agree, man. No, as I was telling you off the air, I really think you've upped your game. And
yeah.
Here, let's while we're talking, we'll take the cover down again. But here, I'll bring up some pages we don't want to spoil.
Yeah, but these are all on the Kickstarter. They should be all on the Kickstarter, I think.
Okay.
Preview page anyway. So
okay, good deal.
Yeah, you kindly said that, and I was like, oh yeah. And then like some of these images here, like these were drawn over a year ago.
Oh.
And while I'm proud of them, I no problems with them. You get that feeling of like, oh man, I feel like I've grown so much in the past year doing the rest of the book. Because I'd started working on the book, another opportunity came up to one, help out a friend, and two, kind of really sharpen my tools a little bit, stretch myself, that would in the end benefit this book. So I kind of put this on pause, did that book, came back to this, a better, smarter artist. And I think by the end of the book, I've done the best work I've done yet. And I'm so pumped to get started on issue 2. I've already started laying it out, working on the cover. I'm just so excited about this book.
So are these images now?
Yeah.
A little bit later in your process?
Yeah. Like the one right now with her, that was probably, I want to say maybe July or August. I did it. I had, again, being a musician, I kind of have a thing about the way guitars are depicted in comics. If they are like not drawn exactly on model, like it doesn't bother me. Like if other artists do it or whatever, like I don't care. That's fine. But when I do it, if it doesn't look like it's on model, it's garbage. I don't afford myself the same grace. So since I've been doing this book digitally, I went and I drew like a ton of different guitar models, and I made brushes for strings and brushes for guitars to kind of give me like the basic shape, so that way I can like speed up my process. So I basically made technical drawings for myself to then use as my pencil, so then ink over, so everything's kind of like in place. And I actually been working pretty hard to make sure when you see everybody playing, they're playing actual chords, or they're playing in sync with each other. Like if the bass player is playing higher up, they're fretting like the octave, or in my head, I know what they're playing because they're playing a part of the bass line for that song, so they're all in similar chords. I think like in this one here, we have Evie, and then we have Ricky to her right, our left, and he's on the octave.
Yep.
And Jack, same thing, so on the right there. So it might be a little bit looser with the drums, because drums you can kind of, but who cares about the drummers, right?
Shame on you. Shame on you. Myself, Ringo Starr, and Neil
No,
Peart are ready to kick your ass.
No, for the drums too, I'm also trying to make sure at least, everything's looking musically accurate, because the plan is eventually to record some music for the book.
That is so
And
great to hear. I was going to ask you
yeah.
guys if beyond that, um, is there a playlist of already established music that you guys have for
Um,
people to maybe listen to
I
while?
made one. I wanted to run it by Steve to make sure he's
Sure.
cool with everything on there. Um, but it's gonna be pretty much like, Joan Jett, the Runaways, Hailstorm, um, and probably we have other bands in the book too that are gonna be popping up here and there. So there's gonna be some more gothic kind of stuff. There's a gothic band in the book. Um, yeah, so I get to draw some like guitars in the future, which will be fun. And all kinds. There's gonna be all kinds of bands in the book, and I'm really looking forward to exploring like the visuals of that as well and all that. And um, so yeah, there's definitely a playlist I've been crafting that be like, here's the vibe of the book.
Yeah.
I just got to run it by Steve and see
Sure.
like, do you agree? Like, because we're partners in this, so I don't want to be step on those toes.
Sure.
Um,
Dave Gibbons wrote that great mod book years ago. God, probably almost 20 years ago now. The originals, and it was all about the scooter gangs of London of the late 50s and early 60s. And Dave was a mod, and I'm always
oh
like, Dave, you gotta put together a mod playlist, because especially a British mod. I mean, the scene was in England, but I always find that late 50s, early 60s, pre-Beatle rock and roll period interesting, and who was big then, and bands like the Shadows and some of the other bands that again were topping the British charts before when the Beatles were still working their act out in Hamburg,
yeah,
and Liverpool and everything. So no, I think that's really interesting. And Alex Segura had a playlist for one of his. I can't remember if it was a novel or a comic, but I know he did one. I just think it's a great idea, and I really think it's a mood setter
yeah.
for when you're reading the book. Also, I don't know if it's. I think this movie is still in the festivals, and they haven't made a DVD of it yet. This guy that I had on Word Balloon last year made a great documentary about the Olympic Theater in LA, which was it was funny. It was a sports arena originally, and a lot of boxing and a lot of wrestling. But by the 80s and through the 90s, it became a very important punk and new wave venue
Mhm.
for the LA scene. And a lot of great bands like X and the Go-Go's and all these other great bands played at the Olympic. And I got that vibe from your book as well, looking at that.
Oh
So,
yeah, yeah. This is definitely set like in LA. Um,
yeah,
and there's definitely, we're playing a little fast and loose with the locale and the time and all that.
sure.
We're more about capturing a vibe and having it be fun than like being slavishly accurate, because there's ways to do that to be amazing and fun and engrossing, but that's just not what we're going for at this. Um,
It could get
and
tedious as well for the creator, I think.
yeah,
God, I don't know if you know the stories, but like as great as Jack Kirby's World War II stories were as far as art goes, uniforms didn't match.
mhm,
He designed tanks that were completely not up to the specs of a
yeah,
classic German or American tank and things like that.
yeah. But
No,
who
and
cares? The
indulge
story's
yourself.
there. The story's
Yeah,
there, and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
what's important.
absolutely. No, and again, I
Um,
think you're evoking that vibe
yeah.
with what you guys are doing in the book. That's great.
I mean, it makes seem like out of left field, but like one of the books I was really inspired by creatively, just period, was The Things We Carried by Tim O'Brien. And one of the things was that, I forget now because it's been so long, but either some or all of those stories didn't actually happen, but it's more about creating the feelings and the experience of what was happening then. And that's always kind of struck with me, of like, in terms of like accuracy of things and stuff like that. It's like the story is always more important than the facts for fiction. And while people can do both, and I've loved things that have done both extremely well, that's just not where my creativity heads me down. So
I like the elevator pitch for the book too. That it's kind of Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Spinal Tap with a dash of Ash versus Evil Dead, and I think
yeah,
you guys did all those
That's exactly how Steve pitched it to me, and I'm like, okay, I wasn't like, not that I have anything against Buffy, it just never was my thing, but Spinal Tap, yes. Evil Dead, yes. And I remember one of the earliest conversations I had with Steve was like how bloody can we get? Like, do you want to like? He's like, no, go nuts. So I'm like,
Great.
amazing. So
Yeah.
while the first issue, I'm not going to say is a splatter fest, but we are gearing up to things, just being absolutely just drenched in blood. And I can't wait to get to get to
Well,
that part.
it makes sense. I mean, again, these are vampire hunters who
Yeah,
obviously dip into the Dracula mythos with,
yeah.
the idea of the Helsings, and of course, seeing
Mhm.
we got right there first scene. We got Vlad the
Yeah,
Impaler back in
yeah.
the day,
That
or
yeah,
a
that
couple
was
years before.
yeah, that was a real fun thing too, because not to spoil anything, but Vlad isn't the main villain of this arc. He's kind of the guy who will probably be the big bad over the whole story.
Yeah, he's pulling the strings.
Yeah, and we were really trying to like, let's do something different. Let's do something really, really different with him. And visually, we kind of went a few different ways, and I think ultimately we landed on a guy he's just tired of, like, nothing's exciting to him. Like, even having this rivalry with the Van Helsings is like, he's just like, whatever. You see it in the preview, he's just kind of bored with it all. So the idea of just Evie being the reluctant successor to becoming the vampire hunter is something that he's not expecting. So I'm looking forward to playing with that and developing that. And based on the response to the first issue, I'm really, really hoping we can get to the end of this huge story. But right now we're focused on this one story and keeping it a little bit more localized about Evie, kind of like finding out what her path really is and what she can do with it.
Fair enough. I notice again the PDF that you send me,
Yeah.
and tell me there are color pages, there are black and white pages.
Yeah.
Is that by
Jason
design, or has Jason not gotten to those pages yet?
those were just Jason hasn't.
Okay.
He's probably done them already by the
Yeah.
time of right now. But yeah, he's been doing a phenomenal job.
Oh,
Um,
Jason's really killing it. And again,
yeah,
another guy that I've known forever and keeps getting
yeah,
great
yeah,
opportunities, and he's a hell of a colorist.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I've met Jason. He's a great artist, colorist. And I was really excited when Steve's like, "Oh yeah, Jason's going to color the book." I'm like, "Yes." You're like, "All right, cool." Because usually I color myself, and that's just really out of necessity than
Well, sure.
anything else. And so it's nice to see what my stuff looks like with someone who knows what they're doing.
I'm hip.
And
Absolutely.
especially when he makes choices that I would not have made. And I'm like, oh my God, that was such the right choice. Like, there's an image that comes up a lot. It's the cover of our mystery box is also in the book of they're like kind of like drenched in purple and they're playing. And I've literally stared when I first got that page back, I literally stared at it like several times for like several minutes throughout that day. I'm just like, wow, like it looks like I know what I'm doing.
Well, and
And
that's the sub. Pardon me. And feel free to elaborate. I was going to say that color really sets mood and tone,
yeah,
and we're not consciously aware of it while we read it. That's good, because that
yeah.
is kind of the subconscious, like, all right, and by the way, now you're feeling this, and it's likely because of the colors. I didn't mean to step on you. Please continue.
No, exactly. It's just for hammering home the fact that Jason did such an amazing job. And over the past year, I've had two professional colorists actually color over me for separate projects, and I'm like, oh, okay, this actually looks really good. I'm not seeing all the flaws that I would normally see amplified because I colored myself or whatever. Not that I hate everything I do, because I colored the cover, and I'm really proud of that cover too. I really love the cover I did, the cover
Oh yeah.
A. Um, and the so that was a lot of fun to do as well. But yeah, just I'm so excited for the team. Jason colored that one. I colored the one where it's the like the CD cover and the guitar
Oh, the main
pedals and
cover. This one.
yes.
Yeah. No,
um
that's great, man.
yeah, that one was a lot of fun to color. A little shout out to our mutual bud Mike Norton with the Nortone Mo Danger Overdrive.
Oh, that's hilarious. I didn't even think of the reference. That's fantastic.
I love Mike and Crank
yeah.
and the Crankcast. You know, Crank the Letterer
Oh
and
yeah.
his compadre in the Crankcast podcast,
Oh,
which
I
is an
love
amazing
Crank.
podcast.
Crank is one of my oldest friends in comics. Absolutely, man. Both
Yeah,
of those
yeah.
guys.
And there's a kind of like a running joke in there that Crank was going to start a pedal company called Nortone, since Mike also plays guitar and all that.
Yes, he does.
So I saw Mike actually used it for something. So I'm like, I messaged him, I'm like, Mike, I need that logo. He sent it to me, and there we go. The Mo Danger guitar pedal. I
That's
love
so funny.
one of the things also because I host my own podcast, Comics Coffee Metal, and on there I've interviewed so many of my buds who are also amazing artists, but also amazing musicians. And the overlap of like musicians and comics is just staggering if you really look at it.
Oh yeah.
Like there's 9 times out of 10, if I see like an artist I don't really know or whatever, I'm just kind of familiar with them, but they post a picture of their studio and I see a guitar in the back, that's where I'm drawn to. I'm like, I want to ask them like, hey, what's guitar is that? Like, what model is that? Like, yeah, sure. I know it's a Cintiq, whatever. That's your desk, whatever. I see the books on the show. What's that guitar? Like, let me see that. Like,
I watch Pawn Stars, and whenever someone brings in an old guitar, I'm immediately like, oh, let's get the background on this story and stuff. Yeah,
I love
great.
guitars. I love cheap guitars. I love fancy guitars. It's just, I don't know. It's the fun thing that just like tickles my brain, in a similar way, but in a different area than comics does. And it's just like a nice thing to explore. And I'm really looking forward to actually in this book. There's a few nods to some friends. They're playing Dewey cabinets for the guitars. Not shout out to my buddy Ben Dewey, another amazing guitar player, and a phenomenal artist. And there's gonna be plenty more. Our mutual bud Patrick Brower of Challengers Comics. He's definitely going to be showing up, probably with me in some sort of band formation in the background somewhere. Because
that's
Patrick
outstanding.
and I collaborated on a bunch of music and stuff before and in the future.
I do voices, so because I do voices, I can kind of sing certain songs because really that's doing a voice is really hitting a note that is, reminiscent of the person you're imitating, the rhythm of it as well, the cadence, everything else. So it's close to singing. So I would never call myself a singer per se. Well, but Patrick and I will karaoke a lot, and we'll go to Lincoln Karaoke here in Chicago and stuff. And oh yeah, man. Oh no, we have a blast. We have a blast. So
I feel like you'd be really good at like doing like crooning type tunes.
Well, I do. That's funny, Don, because honestly,
you got that quality to your voice to where it'd be like, yeah, you'd settle right into there.
Well, a lot of those old crooning Great American Songbook, Sinatra, Tony Bennett songs were written to be sung. I mean, the sheet music was selling as much as the records were. So a lot of those songs were kind of put in the mid-level range that if you, again, can carry a tune, then, you don't sound half-assed doing it. So no, you're right, man. I do a lot of Sinatra and I do a lot of those composers from the 40s and 50s because it's fun and it's easy. And then also like I love the Everly Brothers. I love doing the Everly Brother harmonies. I love doing the Bee Gees harmonies. I that's really where I'm imitating and really make my voice very nasal like the Gibb brothers. And me and Patrick really love on SNL when Fallon and Justin Timberlake would do the Barry Gibb talk show. And they would, they would sing. They rewrote the Nights on Broadway to be the Barry Gibb talk show theme song. But yeah, I mean, just the lines and all of that crap. So that's hilarious. Our Burroughs Snake says I'd kill here a Danzig cover, John. Yeah, that's not
John. If you ever want to do a Danzig cover, I will record instrumentals for you. I'll record Mother in like 20 minutes, and you can do it. I want to hear that as well.
A good friend of mine, Don. I don't know if you know this documentary, but the guy just saw the Ronnie James Dio documentary. I don't know where it's streaming or if it's on cable, but literally last night he's like, dude, I don't know if you like Dio, but it's a great documentary. And I'm not a Dio guy. I'm not a real metal guy per se, but I certainly respect it. And God, those are my college years, man. At my college radio station, I mean, at least 3 times a year we'd get a Dio album. I mean, he was just shitting out albums and they were good.
Yeah. I have a weird thing with Dio. Because as a solo artist, I think Dio's awesome, but my Black Sabbath is Ozzy Black Sabbath.
Of course.
I could never get with the Dio stuff.
I'm hip.
And that was a point of like almost like a point of contention at some point with some people. And I, not recently, but in the past couple of years, I went and I delved in, and I'm like, okay, let me really give these albums a fair shake. And I did. And again, all respect to Dio. Like no one did it like Dio, and no one will. But I'm like, I feel like the best album they ever did was the one that wasn't technically a Black Sabbath album. That was the Heaven and Hell album they did in the mid-aughts. And that's an amazing album. That should be a Black Sabbath album, but that was my favorite, whatever. But
all right.
But yeah, that's my Dio.
For Van Halen, I mean, again, especially my prime of being in music radio and stuff was not only the David Lee Roth stuff, but also the Sammy stuff as well, Sammy Hagar. And I mean, really, when you're talking about pure Van Halen, it is the David Lee Roth stuff. Mm-hmm. However, I really respect Sammy Hagar as a songwriter and a performer. Yeah. And I just thought it was interesting. Not as great, but I did think really valid and interesting those Sammy Hagar Van Halen years.
My favorite band of all time is Metallica.
Okay.
And if anyone's familiar with Metallica's overall discography, they know that there's points where people like make hard stops of where they stop liking Metallica. But for me, I came into them in the mid 90s with like the Load and Reload era, where it was more of a hard rocky kind of sound, which was actually, that coupled with grunge, I think really solidified what they did, and all that really solidified the sound of like hard rock radio for like the next decade afterwards. But if anything that's shown me though is like, I love all of it though, because I love those albums. And I went back and I still love Kill 'Em All with its overly reverbed not yet puberty hit James Hetfield screeching all the way to like the current stuff, even Saint Anger. Like I like all of it. So when there's bands like Van Halen where it's like, yeah, they're not necessarily up my alley, not necessarily my thing, there's bits of each era where I can really appreciate like who's not gonna like Jump or Running with the Devil? Like, I started off as a bass player. What bass player is not going to be like doom doom? Like who's not going to do that? Like, just instinctively. But then you got Hagar. I mean, who can deny like Right Now or everything else from their era that I'm obviously blanking out at the moment. But like, so it's all good. I was gonna make a joke that I was really a fan of their third singer, but I couldn't remember his name. Gary Sharon. There you go.
Oh my God, I didn't even remember that either. That's fantastic.
Like I say, I'm really a Gary Sharon fan. Like, that's really my Van Halen. But no,
that's like Genesis with Peter Gabriel, Phil Collins.
Exactly.
And the third guy there that only like Ray, and I don't remember his last name, but he was a Van Halen, or rather, he was a Genesis singer for a minute, and I remember when they did like Storytellers, I think on MTV, Ray was the lead singer, and they did Follow You, Follow Me, which actually was a nice cover of their original song with Ray singing instead of Phil, but it was cool. Now you did this cover, am I right?
Yeah, that's another me quickly penciling and Steve inking. This looks more like me than but it was a pretty simple cover. So Steve definitely put his own talents to flesh it out. But yeah, that's an homage to the Blizzard of Oz cover from Ozzy.
Sure.
And we definitely have more, albums, homages coming with future issues if we get that far, which we really hope we do, and we seem to be tracking to have at least enough support for a second or third issue. And so yeah, that's and kind of like take the bring that Ozzy reference back, like. With Ozzy, you kind of have like the reverse where it's like throughout his solo career, you have all the different guitar players who kind of define eras. You have the Rhodes era, the Jake E. Lee era, the Zakk Wylde era. And so it's also kind of like that with Ozzy too, with me. Cause I kind of prefer the Zakk era cause that's kind of where I grew up, but all respect to Randy.
Sure.
I can't stand his guitar tone, but the songs are, you can't argue against those. And Jake E. Lee's, really underrated. But yeah, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, I think if you can just like take a step back from the things you enjoy and like look at all of it, like you'd appreciate it so much more. Just, and if you don't like certain things, then you don't like certain things, but you have the thing you'd liked. And
Yeah, music is like comics, man. There's plenty
yeah.
for everyone, and you don't have to love everything. I went, I think it was 2 summers ago. I got to remember my math. But at Wrigley Field, yeah, I think it was 2 summers ago when they had Fall Out Boy, Weezer, and Green Day at Wrigley Field.
Yeah.
And I was, tweeting from there and taking pictures from the, my seat and stuff. And Norton was giving me shit. He's like, "You're too old to be at that concert." And I always got to do the Mike voice. But
Yeah,
but I'm like, "Hey man, well and I'm like, "No," and I get it. But honestly, I'm like, I was really lucky because just as I was hitting 30 is when I started working for WXRT, the rock station.
Mhm.
And I really felt like it extended my 20s decade of music appreciation another
Yeah.
10 years. And I'm like, guess what? I don't know how to break it to you, Mike, but I was in the music business when these bands were breaking in. Not Fallout. I was out by Fall Out Boy, but certainly Weezer and Green Day. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember when they were brand new, buddy, and I was working at
Yeah.
XRT.
And
So no,
yeah. And
this is my era.
and if you
So
like
yeah,
Weezer and Green Day, it's not that far of off the branch of the tree, the musical tree, to say that you like Fall Out Boy too.
no, it was they were fine, and of course,
Yeah.
being a Chicago band, of course, I love Fall
Yeah.
Out Boy, but I have to admit, I really was there for Weezer and Green Day, and it was so great. It was such a great show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thank God, man, that we're walking out of COVID slowly, and live shows are coming back, and because nothing, as I'm sure you feel, is the same way, and no pun intended, nothing feeds the soul more than I think when you sit and you hear great live music. I mean, it is such a stress reliever, and you're just comfortable. It's like, I mean, there's that angle too. But for me, it really is like, okay, I can breathe again.
I have a weird relationship with live music because I haven't gone to nearly as many concerts as someone might think I have, based on how much I love music and playing it and all that. Because I'm not the type of guy to go crazy in a mosh pit. I'm not the type of guy to be like headbanging, like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sitting there kind of appreciating it and soaking it in. And a lot of the times I just kind of feel like, man, like the energy I'm feeling is like, I want to go play music now. Like I'm instantly invigorated to go do that. But I'm also like, well, I'm here at the show. I got to enjoy the show. I can't just go and leave. And there's been a few times where that's transcended things and I'm really in it and I'm really enjoying the show. But yeah, I'm glad, things are opening up a bit more. People are trying to enforce more safety regulations and keep them enforced to keep things going.
Yeah.
But I'm the dad of two small kids now.
Okay.
And a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. So
Okay,
going out to
congrats.
concerts isn't exactly something I'm I can count on doing, which kind of stinks because just quite a few metal bands that I really want to see live that are coming around in the area and all that, that I really can't wait to see live. But I'm the only one person I know, like in several hundred miles, that wants to go see them. And as amazing and supporting as my wife is, I don't think she wants me dragging her to a Gojira Mastodon show, and when she's gonna be like, okay, I know like 2 songs, God bless her, I drug her to a evening with Dream Theater before we had kids. And I like Dream Theater. They're a great band.
All right.
And I did not realize that it was an evening with Dream Theater, meaning they're going to be doing deep cuts. So I recognized like 1 song.
Wow.
And she's like, I think I recognized 1 song now. Yeah, we are definitely too old for the pit.
No, I get it, man.
I see people jumping in the pit. I'm thinking I got a $250 copay on my emergency room bill, but no, thank you.
For tourists, they should know that Kuma's Corner, fantastic burger place that has a heavy metal theme.
Yeah.
I go there for the food. I am not a metal guy, and it cracks me up. I'm never ashamed to admit my age. I'm 58, and one of my old high school buddies and I went to Kuma's about 4 months ago, and they are playing hardcore metal, and it's fantastic. And all the waitresses are dressed like the Suicide Girls and stuff, and really or Cassie Hack from Hack Slash. They got that vibe going as far as the waiters and or the waitresses, and it's hilarious because it really is serious metal, and people singing like this and
Yeah.
the demon voice and everything. And me and my buddy, we're just like, yeah, all right, here we are, Ed and Chester ready to play their checkers game. And it's like all of a sudden they took the wrong turn. What the fuck are they doing in the metal bar? But it's great. It's a great place. And honestly, everybody, if you're a metal person, you want to go to Kuma's, and you will not be disappointed by the food. The food is amazing.
Yeah, we went there, I think once or twice. And they had a location because we had moved up to the suburbs many
the
years
Schaumburg one, I bet. Did you go to the one in Schaumburg?
There's one in Vernon Hills.
Oh, sure. Yes.
Lake County that we were going to go to. I'm like, yeah, let's just go there. And they closed.
Man. Because
I think it was a COVID. I think it was a COVID casualty.
No, it happens, man. Absolutely. And now currently in the city, I live 5 minutes away. I was so mad. Stephanie Phillips, the great comic writer, was doing a signing. I want to say a Harley Quinn signing, or maybe Catwoman before she left the book at Kuma's. And I was too sick. And I'm like, I'm 5 minutes away. But again, it was, I was shaky enough health-wise. And plus, you worry about COVID, if you are under the weather. And I'm like, I don't want, A, I don't want to make you sick. B, I don't want to get sick.
Yeah, I just had my first bout of COVID just after Christmas. And
wow. I knock on wood, man. I don't know how I've survived without having it.
It's not fun. Not fun. I'm pretty sure I'm still experiencing some side effects from it too. But fun fact about Kuma's, or more really the location is, it is literally like 2 blocks from where I grew up.
Oh,
my
that's
parents'
crazy.
house is like 2 blocks away from there. Bucket of Blood, which is now occupying a space right near there on Elston and Belmont.
Yeah, the bookstore, absolutely.
That used to be a pharmacy where I got my first comic book.
I believe it. That's great, man.
My grammar school is literally like, another 2 blocks the other way from Kuma's. So everyone's like, have you heard of Kuma's? You ever been there? I'm like, if they had opened like, when I was younger, like we probably would have went there a whole bunch, but like
that's hilarious.
Now it's just like, I'm going to visit my parents. I can't really, take them there.
So everybody, that's Kuma's with a K, Kumas, Kuma's Corner, and unbelievable hamburgers. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So
I think I had the Slayer burger or the Neurosis burger. The Neurosis burger was good. The Slayer one had like chili and crap all over it.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. No, it's
if you use like this like crazy, like, burgers as crazy as metal bands. There you go.
Absolutely.
There you go.
No,
I do have one thing to say though.
Please.
Something I kind of do on my show, if I'm interviewing somebody who's not really into metal, I try to find an in for them. And John, I think there's this band. They're not technically metal, but they're hard rockish. They straddle that metal line. Volbeat.
I don't know Volbeat. Okay.
I think you would dig them because I think you could sing those songs. They have that croony type voice to it, and it works really well. And
send me links. Send me YouTube links or whatever.
There's a song called Lola Montez that I think.
Okay.
I think could be your next karaoke jam.
Oh, that's excellent.
I'll make sure. I'll message you with those there.
See, I always appreciated metal, not only House of Metal on MTV, but when Beavis and Butthead were in their prime. Yeah. And one of my favorite things of them watching a heavy metal video was of Gwar. And they really didn't say anything other than they kept saying Gwar, and it's like, yep, that's pretty much the vibe, man.
One of the things I love about metal and comics, and kind of why I started the whole podcast, is metal, like comics, it's not, it transcends like a genre. It's a medium. Like 2 different people can say, I love metal. Then you say, okay, what's your 5 favorite bands? You got 5 completely different sounding things happening, And sure, there's depths to other types of music. I think probably rap is probably the one that's probably more, almost as in depth in terms of like different subgenres as metal. But metal kind of is great because it kind of, you can combine anything with it, and it becomes, in my opinion, it makes that thing better. There's this band called Electric Callboy right now, and they do tongue-in-cheek kind of stuff, but it's really like dance kind of poppy kind of stuff, but it's got these big, thick, heavy guitars and screaming on top of singing, and like it's just so crazy. And it's like, that's one type of metal, but then you got stuff that's like, Blackened Deathcore, which is just the subhuman, like, you know, sometimes it's literally been downtuned by, you know, pitch shifters or whatever. And sometimes it's just someone who can somehow audibly make that sound with their voice. And it's all got valid things. You know, I love all of it.
Did
You know,
you go ahead?
there's
Finish.
yeah, you know, I kind of do some album reviews on my YouTube channel now and all that. And there's a band that's just really they do that like that this that you know, super low tune. There's no clean singing in it whatsoever, but I love it. It's great. And then there's bands that like Electric Callboy, or, you know, I like a lot of symphonic metal, you know, or just stuff like Metallica, you know. Just there's so many cool random things, and that's why I love metal, and that's why I love comics, because comics can be the same thing. Because I realized that superhero comics and all that weren't necessarily doing it for me anymore, you know. And at first I was like, oh, I guess do I not like comics anymore? And then I'm like, no, dummy, go read some other comics. And then I went and I did, and I'm like, oh wait, I love this, I love this, I love this, you know. And I'm thankful enough to be buddies with a lot of independent creators who send me their stuff to check out, and I'm like, wow, I love this, I love this, you know.
Yes.
So it was a really kind of an eye opener for me to be like, there's so many things in comics to love and enjoy, that to just like pinhole yourself to the one thing because I didn't like that one thing, or I didn't like that one thing anymore.
Yeah.
I was selling myself short. I was losing out on a lot of stuff. And that's what's really kind of fuels me now creatively to do my own comics and all that. Cause I don't have huge aspirations to like go work for Marvel or DC, you know, I don't think they're gonna be knocking down my door. I don't think my style fits with what they do, but for the stuff I want to do, fits perfectly.
Absolutely,
So,
man. No, 100%. Before we get to talk more about your podcast, are you a fan of the Orville?
I don't think I've watched any of it, but I've
Okay.
heard a lot of great things. That, and I know Picard's had like, because I'm a Next Generation guy, you know, that was my
Well, then
jam.
you'll love it real fast, because Peter Macon, who basically plays the Worf character on the
Okay.
Orville, giant black man, friendly as hell, funny as hell on the Orville, is his own character. I mean, it probably starts as a Worf template,
Mhm.
but goes its own way. But he had several opportunities on the show to sing, and I
Mhm.
got to meet him last summer at Terrificon in Connecticut. And I'm like, God, man. And he did a couple old standards, like this amazingly touching, dramatic song that Nat King Cole used to sing called Nature Boy. And it's just this very beautiful ballad. And I'm like, Peter, man, you nailed that. And I go, that's amazing. I go, were you a singer that wanted to do Broadway and musicals and stuff? And he laughed and he said, no, actually, I'm a heavy metal singer. And I'm like, that's fantastic, man. And
Nice.
he can do that guttural voice that you were just describing in terms of
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
the subgenres. So yeah, man, no, he's amazing. But
I'm
so
gonna have to
tell
do
me
some
about,
digging now. I'm gonna
yeah,
check this out
Comics,
for
Coffee,
sure.
and Metal is your podcast. How long have you been doing it?
I've been doing it for about consistently for about 3 years now.
Okay, cool.
I started it 4 years ago. I wanted to do a video podcast because at the time, video podcasts weren't really super
Sure.
prevalent. But the machinery I had at home to process the video and all that wasn't great. To render like a 1 hour video with a very minimal editing or whatever, it took like a weekend on my computer.
Oh my God. Sure.
So after a couple episodes, I'm like, I can't do this. So then I kind of shelved it. We had a whole bunch of stuff. My son, was born. We had to do a bunch of whole remodeling in the house. And then at the end of it, my wife was like, we had missed my birthday because we were remodeling and my son, getting ready for my son and all that. And it was Christmas time. She's like, why don't you set yourself up with a new computer? Because I'd been looking how to build one or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was able to build myself a fairly decent computer for a really good price. And this was right before everything got really crazy with graphic cards going up and skyrocketing because of crypto stuff and all kinds of like CPU shortages and chip shortages and stuff and RAM shortages. So I got in really, really, really lucky because I priced it out. 6 months later, the same computer would have cost twice as much.
Wow.
And I'm like, it wasn't even that impressive of a computer. It just was able to do some things. So I kind of got back into, I wanted to do the podcast again because I wanted to talk to my friends because I'm not really going out to a lot of cons guy. I'm not really a going out after the cons guy. I'm kind of a homebody, but I want to talk to everybody. So it was really an opportunity for me to talk to my buddies. And then as it kind of went on, people were asking to come on the show. I got to know more people, just started inviting more people on, and it kind of evolved from there. And eventually I've gotten, better equipment, better things like that. I have the nice SM7B microphone here and all that. Is that all necessary to do a podcast? No. But, I'm enough of a recording geek to where I'm like, I want to have this nice standard thing,
Sure. No, you can assemble a decent podcast situation without having to spend top dollar. And there are excellent microphones that are, just under $100, just over $100 that are absolutely great.
There are USB microphones now, just straight plug and play USB microphones now that for $50 or so, that's really a lot of people really need.
Yep.
For me also, because I dabble in metal screaming myself here and there. So this is also kind of the mic du jour for that.
Good.
So, but it just kind of evolved and grown, and we just had our 100th episode. Because I've wavered between doing weekly and bi-weekly here and there, and I had Patrick Brower on, our buddy, because he was my very first guest, so he ended up being my 100th guest as well.
That's great.
But along the way, I had a chance to interview a lot of people I never would have talked to normally, met some new friends, got to talk to people I've admired, got to talk to people who work in YouTube, music stuff. And
great.
I'm trying to branch out this year with interviewing more bands. Actually, tomorrow I'm interviewing a gentleman from a death metal band. And, I'm trying to branch it out to the YouTube a little bit, where I'm not trying to do I'm not trying to be like a YouTube creator, but I'm trying to do things for YouTube to kind of broaden, because I have ideas of creative things I want to do. And I've kind of gotten the setup to be able to do them in a manner I'm okay with, that won't be super detrimental to my time.
I get it. No, Don, honestly, one of the reasons why I chose the name for my show, Word Balloon, yes, it is obviously comics related.
Yeah.
But I'm like, no, it's a dialogue between me and my guest.
Yeah.
And it could be about anything. And I indulge myself all the time. It's funny. I think of him more as a classic guitarist rather than a metal guitarist. But Joe Satriani made a comic book last year, and I had the opportunity to interview him. I don't know if remember him, Surfing with the Alien.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah. Oh no, yeah. Okay. I'm pretty sure I watched the episode. My memory is terrible, so
that's all right, man.
We'll need to get jogged. But I'd be shocked if I did not watch that episode.
What a guy! What a guy! I mean, really.
Yeah, he's
such a nice guy. And again, my high school and college years, I was buying his music, so it was so wonderful to have the opportunity to talk to him. And he's a big sci-fi nerd. He's a big fantasy nerd.
Well, he had the Silver Surfer on his first album, Surfing the Alien.
That's right. Surfing with the Alien and he even told that story of getting to license the image, and it was very reasonably priced back in the 80s.
Yeah,
I wouldn't imagine that would be the case today.
Yeah, I mean, I've been, and also kind of the YouTube thing kind of affords me to, because I've been trying to be in contact with more PR firms for metal bands and stuff, and so they're like, hey, do you want to do a reaction video for this album? And then when the press time comes along for their album, do you want to get them on your show? And kind of develop those types of relationships.
Excellent.
So sure. I'm not a reaction video type guy. I'm not going to be slapping the desk and spinning my chair around being like, oh my God.
I love how that's become a YouTube thing. And especially, again, being 58, watching these people that are 30 years younger and even more. And it's like, I'm watching Gordon Lightfoot's song Sundown for the first time. And it's like, are they going to like it? Are they not going to like it? It's fun.
Yeah. And there's, if you find the right personality that kind of clicks with you, it's like, they're really fun. They're really fun to watch.
Yes.
But mine are, whatever I do, mine are really chill and I just kind of talk about it. But I've had lots of positive response to that with quite a few of them I've done. And so I'm like, okay, continue this up because I'd like to interview more musicians and speak to more people like that. I always said, I don't have planned end for the show at the moment. Way back when I thought 100, I'll end it, nice even 100, put a cap on it. I'm done, but I'm having too much fun with it now still. So, but I said, if I ever get Kirk Hammett on, I don't know how that would happen. I'll have to do some sort of trickery. But if I ever get him on, that's like the ultimate, like,
that's
I can put the hat on the podcast and be like, you're done. We've done everything we need to do. I've tried so hard to get like Greg Capullo on, and Greg's a sweetheart. He actually responds to me and says he's too busy or whatever, but he responds, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have to.
Roy Thomas kept me waiting for over 10 years. And then finally, and it was like, I can give you 5 minutes. I'm like, no, Roy, I can't do 5 minutes. You're Roy Thomas. Decades of comic books. So no, I get it.
What do you pick to talk to Roy Thomas about for 5 minutes?
I'm not. Well, that's why I'm like, no, I need more. And we agreed to 30 minutes, and thank God he was having a good enough time that it ended up being an hour or so.
Nice.
And I'm like, all right, we're cool. But that's funny you said that, because David Macho, who's an excellent Spanish art rep for a lot of European creators and knows everybody in comics, because he's also one of the key European translators, not only in Spanish, but so many other languages of American comics. So he knows everybody. And he had a fantastic show called Dialogue of Comics. And that was, whatever that is in Spanish. And just like you, he was like, well, I'm going to get Grant Morrison. And after I have Grant, that's it. That's enough. And I'm like, well, you're talking to the wrong guy. I mean, May 10th will be my 18th anniversary doing Word Balloon, so I'm sorry. I still think it's fun. I think it's interesting. The dynamics of comics continue to change. And, even in this tumultuous, for a lack of better description, time where the ground below us is literally shifting when it comes to some of these comic companies, the pandemic was, I know for some people, a very stressful and debilitating time. It was great to talk to the creators who didn't take the pencils down no for it to be the final word. And it's like, fine, then I'm going to make comics without you. And I will do them on my own, and I will find a way to get them to the people. And it's this wonderful story of both creators and readers saying, sorry, no, we want to dance. The band may not want to play anymore. We'll find something else to dance to. And they did.
Yeah. And I think that really created the culture, like in Kickstarter, of single issues being able to be more regularly funded with confidence, with
I hear you, man. No, you're
security. Right. And the pandemic, like it made, obviously its effect on the world is obvious, but
we're still feeling it, man. The
within
our
micro view of it with comics, like, and like, I didn't handle the beginning of the pandemic well at all, but that's fine. I've come out of, I'm not going to say we're out of it, but I'm right now, I feel like I'm like the best I've ever been as a person, parent, husband, father, artist. But it's a lot of work. And I think either personally, mentally, or just general hard work of getting things done. And I kind of, started doing all of that. And I feel like, we're coming out of this, and the industry is in such a weird, scary spot that I feel like, though, a lot of creators in my wheelhouse or in my level or under and over are so hardened now to where it's not that they're they're impervious to the ups and downs of it anymore, but it's like, well, we're not stopping. Like, we're just going to keep going. And there's definitely, divergent attitudes on how to do that. We'll put it that way. But I'm blessed to know so many amazing creators who just, they put their nose to the grindstone and they just keep busting out awesome thing after awesome thing. And whether it's someone who's doing multiple books a year, someone who's just doing one book a year, or, I look at an artist like Matt Lesniewski, who did an amazing book called Static. But he's also done, this new book called Faceless and the Family, and his art has this gotten ridiculous. Like he was already ridiculous. Now it's like there's not a word made for this guy's art at this point. The way it's morphed and changed. You look at Daniel Warren Johnson, someone like that, who's like, just taking it and run, and he's doing his own thing, and and there's many other creators that are up and coming that I feel like are going to be really kicking a lot of ass in the future. Bob France and Kevin Cuff, two of my buddies, they did this awesome book called Metal Shark Bro. They're working on a bunch of other books, and they are really, really great people. They're a writing duo that I'm like, in like 5 years, they're probably going to be insanely popular. Buddy like Liana Kangas, Mario Candelaria, Rich Dueck, Joe Mulvey, like all these other creators and artists, and there's just so many people just doing the hard work. I'm forgetting a lot of people, and there's just so many amazing people that I know that I'm thankful to know, because their drive drives me, and it led to Evie and the Helsings.
Indeed.
And the response to this book has been beyond humbling. Steve has had great success in Kickstarter, but his and he would say this because we've talked about this. It's always been, a good success. We were funded in 46 hours, not in less than in 26 hours. I'm sorry, 26 hours we were funded.
That's great.
And then we're like, great, okay, here comes the slowdown. Hasn't slowed down.
Wonderful.
We just passed 11K. Our goal was 6. We're on to our 5th stretch goal, which is just, I have to talk to Steve. Hopefully, again, I want to send good vibes to him. His dog Getty isn't doing too hot right now. But hopefully he pulls through and starts getting better. But we're on track to double our goal, and we're not even like in the second week yet. Or we're in the second week. We're not at the end of the second week yet. And I'm just like, this could end tomorrow, and we'd be over the moon.
Oh, I hear you, man. But you have 3 weeks left in your campaign.
Yeah. So
that's
we're like,
great.
Let's take this. And we're talking about things to do. Like, we were so pumped up. Like, I made some promises that stuff I got to do at the end of the campaign, because we funded in under 48 hours. I promised to learn the No More Tears solo from Ozzy and Zach Wilde and play it live at the end of the campaign if we funded in under 48 hours. And then when we got to a certain dollar amount, I swore to wear an 80s metal hair metal outfit while I do it. So now I got to do that. I got to get some zebra pants and a
lovely.
That's and a headband so funny. And a shirt that's probably too tight for me to wear in public, and just like learn this solo and wail on it at the end of the campaign, because people just responded it to so awesomely.
Do they still make Zubaz, the old leather patterned pants? Because honestly, we would wear them in sports, because a lot of sports people would wear them.
They look very comfortable,
and they were incredibly comfortable. And certainly, as we were all in lockdown and wearing sweats more than traditional pants and stuff. No, I understand that. But yeah, it's so funny that it became such a thing with bands performing and wearing Zubaz. So yeah, man, no, and I'm like, I used to have my Bulls colors Zubaz, red and black and everything. So yeah, that's funny. Jesus.
Yeah, I had to look them up, because I'm a thick-legged fella, and so wearing tight pants, there's this level of inappropriateness that may be happening.
You don't have to explain, son. I'm well aware.
And I have to consider that, so I might have to go with some Zubaz for this performance.
That's outstanding. Well,
but also,
go ahead.
Yeah, it also, it's all part of the fun, though. It really is. And I'm having such a blast with the response, and the people seem to really, really, really be responding to the pitch of the book and the pages, and it just so much of the book that people are just really enjoying, from the retro cover to Steve's covers to my covers to my commissions are all sold out already, and we're really, really working hard to have this book out and done before C2E2, so we can have it at C2E2 and really, pump it out there. Steve's going to have a table. I just was able to snag a half table from a buddy, so I'll be there as well.
Good.
And we're just going to be, doing it. I'm already I'm already laying out issue 2. Our hope is to, get that going as soon as possible. I am working on another book as well. I should mention that, called Spend the Night. The first issue is out. It's actually out with Lunar Distribution. It was written by horror director Jackie Kong. She did the cult horror film Blood Diner and a few other films. And my buddy Kelly Williams, who's a super talented artist, he was tapped to do the book. He got super busy. He recommended me, so I was working over his layouts with the first issue, which was really fun because he's super talented, but we draw really differently. So that's been an experience, working with a director on a comic book.
Cool.
And entirely different experience than working with a regular comics writer. But once you kind of get the flow of how everyone's working together. So I'm working on the second issue of that as well.
Wonderful.
So there's a lot of activity happening here, but I'm really excited to get Evie and the Helsings 2 ready for everybody, because the story just gets more and more intense, more and more crazy, and just more and more fun.
That sounds great, Don. So yeah, we'll look for Steve and Don at C2E2 at the end of March. Yeah. That's going to be great. So we're about 6 weeks away from that, or again, I was told there'd be no math today, but again, these wonderful variant covers that the guys did will tell you. And yeah, go to Kickstarter, look up Evie and the Van Helsings, and you will not be disappointed. They showed me issue 1. It's great. And help these guys out, and let's get them to their next stretch goal. Don Cardeneas, I appreciate you coming on today and talking about the book and everything you're doing. And also check out Comics, Coffee, and Metal, Don's podcast.
Yep. Just go to Comics Coffee. Yeah. You can just go to comicscoffeemetal.com. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Don Cardenas Art. Steve's at Steve Bryant Art on both platforms. We're very easy to find. It's not hard to find us. In fact, it's probably too easy to find us.
Easy to find, tough to beat. Don, thanks a lot, man. It was great talking to you tonight.
Had a blast, John. Thanks for finally having me on.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody, thanks for watching Word Balloon. Tomorrow night, Josh Williamson will be on. Ooh. And we'll talk about everything that he's got going at DC.
Nice.
And lots of other great stuff coming before we close out January. So thanks for watching, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy.